Hi there, this Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I thought I would show you today and talk to you a little bit about putting a buildup on the whip. So this is the 275 tungsten shot-loaded snake whip / signal whip. And this is the end where we finished. And I've barge cemented it to give it to allow me to tack down the buildup, and also to lock the strands together, and we'll cut it off once we get the buildup on. I also wanted to talk to you about, so this is a coin holder for people playing pool or dispensing coins. And these are nfc215 chips, which these are 25 millimeter and they're encased in plastic. So they're right at 25 millimeters on the nose. And this will go on the end of the ball, or on the end of the hilt. And so to be at 25 millimeters, we have to figure out what the dimensions are down here. So the dimensions down here, this is kind of an oval build. So it is 21 millimeters, roughly 20.85 or 86 by 19.37, so 19.5 by 21. So it's not a huge amount of oval down here. And I have prepared this is a 1-inch strip of edge tan cowhide, and I put barge cement on a long distance, probably 10 inches or 11 inches on the underside of this. And on the top side, you'll see it's barge cemented on the top as well. And down here, there's a bevel. So I beveled one edge of this. And what that allows you to do is when you attach it, you wrap it, you're already ready to wrap the second layer really quickly. And so this material should be about 2.5 millimeter. So it's at least 2 millimeter. Down here, it's with the barge is 2.23, and up here with 2 layers, it's about 2.5. So 2.5 millimeters added to both sides of the end of the whip is going to bring it up that 5 millimeters with one layer. And then we're going to put a second layer over on the barge cement that's on the top side. And you can do all the painting of this and the painting of the whip in at the same time. In fact, I've already got a chip already coated on one side with the barge cement. And I'm using a plastic bucket because I don't have a table where it's comfortable to work. And yes, I work barefoot because I walk around barefoot most of the day on the tile. So I'll show you how I go about installing this. So you want to get it where you want. And I usually start at the base of the V's. And I want to make sure that we're at a place where we're in the bulge. And then you wrap it. And then once we get it wrapped, I find that I can typically cut it off. And that will make it so that it almost completely fits where I want. And I can come back and trim a little bit more. Now these are like $3 cheapy EMT shears. I have a nice pair of X shears for cutting Kevlar stuff. And here's another cool trick. So this is aircraft wiring harness tape. It's 1/10 of an inch wide and 1/100 of an inch thick, flat braided Kevlar. And this is pretty useful to just quickly compact and make sure this seats well. So that the glue adheres and so that the leather kind of forms to the surface and comes right back off fairly simply. Okay. So it's got the beveled edge down here. And then with the split on one side, I go to the other side of the whip. And at the edge of the bevel, I tack on or push down and try and lay the second layer back from the first layer. And that will create kind of a carvable, like we can make this into a parabellum or a rounded shape in the front. And it used to take me a long time to lay a couple strips of leather like this because I was trying to be perfectionistic. And we're just a hair long. Okay. And you'll notice that there's a well down here because we shifted this whole second layer up. So I like to do a quick tension bind on it to lock the barges together. Now you could leave this wrapped in here. You could make a series of half hitches. You could do a lot of stuff. I just want to make sure the glue binds down well and take the air out of it. And you'll notice I've got this up a ways from the end of the leather. And the reason for that is fairly simple and straightforward. I don't want to cut through this tape, but I'd like to cut the end of the whip off, which itself is barge cemented together. So then we'll bring it around and tuck it. This just creates a quick release. And if you're like me and you want to kind of lock it together, you use a pair of pliers to help lock it down. Anyway, so that's locked down. You want to pull the pin because you don't want to try and cut through a pin. And you want the top of this strand to be below the level. And I don't care too much if I cut into this tape, but I try not to cut into the tape. Okay, so we had 20 millimeters, and this should be about 25, 26, so it's 27. And then up here, sorry, I want to catch it on the bottom layer only. So it's 25. So at 25 millimeters, that disc will fit. And then the top layer here will make it 28 or 29. And so that can be carved down the other direction after we get it all together. So you can use scissors, you can use razor blades, you can use a scalpel, but I find that like a carpet knife is nice for this. And this bucket is used for catching my offcut when I bevel leather, which I bevel leather quite a bit. And so the bottom of it's dusty. And it's just a stand so I can show you. I usually do this on the desk, but the desk is too high to both sit down and be comfortable and cut this off and shoot video. Okay, so now this ring piece can probably be pulled off. And kind of rock the knife back and forth. Don't get your fingers underneath. Don't cut your hands, because we don't need the drama, especially on camera. Okay, so we have trimmed that off and we have a pretty nice pad, and it's all fuzzy because we cut off all that nylon. I recommend doing this part outside. And you want to have a handle of a scalpel. Don't be like me and ignore some of the safety things with holding scalpels or leaving blades on scalpels. I'm going to use the flat end of the scalpel here in a minute. You can torch this. And get the plastic hot. You can see the tungsten shot. And this kind of fuses all of the nylons together. We don't want that on the camera. And then we're going to compact this using something that isn't our fingers, because that thing is a pool of molten lava, basically. Take our can of barges and just hit the end of this. And this needs to dry for 10-15 minutes till the barges is done. You put glue on the nfc215 chip, and then you're going to find the center and stick it right in the center. We can peel this wrap off, and we can shape the leather with the scalpel. And you could also use a bigger razor, but this one I use because I want that scalpel sharp so that when I'm peeling leather that's a brand new blade, I can trim the edges of this to round where the paracord is going to come over the end. And down here, I can trim it back to make kind of a more uniform shape for your fingers to reach. If it has a bump, like this one has a bit of a bump, that's okay because it's going to help lock that paracord in, and after it's got 2 layers of paracord on both sides, this will be almost 1.5 inches. So, and it gives you something to hold on to with your fingers. So I'm going to let this set. I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to leave things mostly as they are. Pick up the scraps here. I'm going to pause the video or stop the video. Okay, so I've got the little nfc215 chip again, and it looks like I got a little barges cement on the back side of this, or the top side, the outside that I want to be white. So here's the trick: if you get a little barge cement on a surface and you want to remove it, you can take the piece of leather that has a little bit on it, you can kind of stick it to it, and you can basically use that to create the friction to pull the excess glue off where you don't want it. I'm not so concerned with the very edge, but that's a useful trick. So I'm going to mount this in the center of the hilt. So you want to make sure you got it in the right place. You're going to press down, and once you put it on there, it's pretty much done. It's stuck. So I'm going to take off my compression wrap of Kevlar. You can keep using the same cord for a long time, but this piece has been used 4 or 5 times. I also spin this material into crackers because it's fantastic cracker spinning material. Okay, now for the dangerous bit. You can go around this whole thing, and using the plastic as a guide, you can trim down the leather and give it a shoulder. You really don't want to trim down the plastic too much, but you can see you can carve this leather with this scalpel and create more of a roundy shape. And you could add another piece of leather to the top of this and create a round ball if you want, if that's the thing you're going for, is completely round. And you can sand leather as well, although the more you work on stuff, especially with, I'm almost scared to do any sanding with a white whip, because the more you handle the white material, the more likely it is to get dirty. And down here, you don't want to cut the paracord at all, but you can kind of scoop up and create a more uniform edge. Now, there's a lot of ways to do things. This is just how I go about making sure that I've got a smooth edge up. And it involves a scalpel. Anytime you're working with sharp blades, you will cut yourself, as evidenced by the nick on my thumb. This is the activity where that happened. I got too distractible. And it requires a pretty good amount of focus after it's braided, because you don't want to have to redo the whole overlay. And I would end up doing the whole overlay if I got too distracted. This little pocket here that I opened up more is where I'm going to leave the 2 tails. It wasn't on accident that it was left that way. It was left that way. sort of on purpose. Here's where I toasted my thumb, was I was skiving gently and not paying attention, and I wasn't on camera, which is annoying because I probably should have recorded, but it takes away from my focus on what I'm doing slightly. And I ramble, and who knows what I say. I usually just put it all out there, so. But since it's ramblings about whips, and the only people watching it are whip makers interested in the subject, or people that think they might want to make whips or braid, I hope that some of the comments help you, or maybe you can pick up a tip or a trick from what I'm doing. So I'm going to pause the video here and show you how to program this nfc215 chip. They also make a sticker form of nfc213, and I chose white to go with the white. And I'm going to put a heel nut on this. I could show the process of pinning it in place real quick, I suppose. So you can use brass pins, or you can use steel pins. This is a steel, just a sewing pin with a plastic head. And these work very well for locking all the layers together. You take the plastic head off, and I start with the side that has the split, and I pin it this direction. Then you pop it loose and use the tip of the pliers to push it in. A little bit less of an angle. I also have brass tacks. I use brass tacks sometimes. Now this pin is going in underneath the welded nylon, so it won't ever pop loose, but I'm going to go parallel. And I have a fabric chair right now, although this chair is on its last legs. Mistakes and all. So I grabbed it a little too high. But you get 3 pins out of 1 pin this way. And by the time the leather has some issue, if you ever have to take this apart, you can take it apart and you can work on it, because it won't it won't come undone ever on this end of the whip. And the other end, one advantage this build has is that it won't come apart on the other end of the whip either. Now, I'm going to push that end down. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go ahead and push that on in. Sometimes I get over exuberant. The nice part is the pin length, if you went all the way through, would come out the other side, but by even just cutting them in half or in thirds, it'll get into multiple layers. This helps keep this from coming undone. Of course, so does the overlay knot. The overlay knot, or the cover knot on the top, is under compression and holding everything together too. So it's a little overkill Heck, everything I do is kind of overkill when you stop and think about it, so I don't really do anything halfway. So I usually put in a row of pins here where the V's match up the other direction. And if you treat your tools well, they'll treat you well, but sometimes the little dikes work great as a hammer for small stuff. And when you press it below the leather surface, it shouldn't snag your paracord when you're tightening it up. Now I'm planning on putting a 3, like an 8 or a 10 by 275 paracord 4-pass knot on this. So I think 4 passes of the cord is about right for filling it up. 3 passes of that are going to be white, and 1 pass is going to be black. Sort of mimicking how much white to black ratio down here. It's not super important. The arrow points to where I'm putting the next row of pins. And if you do things differently or have faster, better ways, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. I don't have very many people to talk to about whips, and part of that is I don't know too many whip makers. I know probably 8 or 10. I don't know how many people care that much about it. I became more or less obsessed with trying to get a whip that would do exactly what I wanted, how I wanted it to move. The problem with that is I didn't even know how to throw a whip, so I thought everything I made was horrible, because I was trying to make a short version of a long whip. And I made about 300 of them in an obsessive, crazy, summer-filled escapade of trying to make something do what I wanted. And in the process of testing out the whips that I was making, I discovered that it was me, not the whip. So I should have just not cared as much as I did. But the end result was I threw away a lot of good ideas when I first started. And I had example whips that I thought were horrible, and I tried to take everything I liked when I could find things I liked about the whips I was making and keep the components that I liked in the whip in the next whip. I'm going to throw that one right in the trash, because otherwise it'll end up on my foot because I'm barefoot. Don't be like me. Wear shoes. I don't have any shoes that really truly fit well. Finally had a pair of custom cowboy boots made. Those things fit well. Okay, so the next step is to program this chip. I'm going to turn off the camera for a second, and then I'll clean this up, and then I'll show you how to program this NFC chip with your cell phone, because you might find that interesting. And then I'll stitch these 3 videos together with the same camera position, roughly, and put it up on YouTube for y'all. Okay, so I was going to show you how to program these NFC chips. So you can program them before you install it on the hilt of the whip, or after. And the program is called NFC Tools, or NFC Tools Pro. When you bump a tag, it'll tell you the serial number of the tag, which you can use to serialize your artwork, in this case whips, or More option, you can load a tag from profile, and you can pull up load as a new list. It's 26 bytes, and it goes to qrtrk.us/pocketsnakes. If you write it, it says write complete. And when you bump it, it'll open a link. And it'll take you to the Pocket Snakes Linktree site. If you want to share it with somebody, you can. So the nice part is, if you have an empty tag like this and you bump it, it'll say empty tag. And if you go into your thing and go to write, you can write complete, and then you can get out of the program and open the link, and it will open the website. So it's kind of a nice way for people when you go someplace to, when you send a whip out, it solves a problem that I had where people would give away all the cards and then they wouldn't have my contact info. So this way it's embedded in every whip. But I don't lock these chips so that if somebody wants to have a custom whip made and they want to put their own contact information in there, they can. But this is the end result, sort of. I've got to build a knot for the end. I'll show you the process of that, but it'll be a separate video. So thanks a lot. This is Chuck with Pocket Snakes. I appreciate it.